Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast. I am Matthew, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Hey man, great to see you. So today we're back with our third installment of our Disney saga, and I'm just going to pass over to Callum to explain what four films we're going to be talking about today in the oeuvre of Walt Disney Studios. So Callum, off to you, buddy.
Yes, so the first that we'll be talking about is Fun and Fancy Free, then Melody Time, and then what is the other one
I
that comes
think
after that?
Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. I think.
Yep, that one.
Yeah,
And then
they're
Cinderella.
all the same, aren't they? They're all just like weird
Certainly
mishmash
the
segments.
first two are just
Yeah.
weird mashed together segments of I don't even remember honestly.
Yeah, man. All these films sort of blend into one, don't they? Or like Three Caballeros and Saludos Amigos and stuff. They just blend into one like hodgepodge, don't they?
Which is why like I actually have like a very explicit appreciation for
Yeah,
films like Cinderella that
yeah.
dare to be different, actually
I
have a
know, man.
narrative.
It's great. It's great. It's great. And but yeah, as Callum said, those are the four films we're going to be discussing today. Cinderella is probably the big hitter. Probably one of the bigger, well, probably the biggest Disney film of all time. So we're covering that today. So I'm really excited for that one because I don't know, but I've never seen it before. Have you, mate?
I'm sure I watched it on, VHS as a child, but I was gonna say I have no memory of it. Obviously, I do, but that's just from pop culture. I don't
Yeah.
actually know that I've seen it.
Yeah, man. That's the sort of the similar thing with a lot of Disney movies, I suppose. Like that's the same with me and The Lion King. Like I have seen it at one point, but it'll be good to rewatch that as well and sort of delve into a bit more. But yeah, just before we kick off this episode, thank you everyone who has supported us recently. Shout out to Isha again, absolute legend. And yeah, please be sure to everyone to like, subscribe, comment, and share your thoughts down below if you want to. And yeah, Callum, shall we crack on with the first movie then, dude?
Yes. So the first film for today, as we said, is Fun and Fancy Free. The fabled return of Jiminy Cricket.
I know, and Donald Duck, I suppose, and Goofy as well. It's sort of the sort of the brings all the cast together, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
To our
so
delight? Question mark.
yeah, I know, man. And oh, but you mentioned Jiminy Cricket there, buddy. Is that the same voice actor? Because he sounds very different to me from Dumbo.
You mean
Oh,
from
sorry,
Pinocchio?
Pinocchio. Sorry, Pinocchio. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of the actors of the time, especially voice actors, just sort of have this like generic
Yeah,
transatlantic, sort of like like
I get
English
you.
version of an American
Yeah,
accent.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like he basically sounds like Winnie the Pooh.
yeah.
Like he does have a very similar drawl to Winnie the Pooh. So I have no idea, but I didn't actually notice a difference.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm just happy to go by your notes on this one, buddy. I don't have a huge out of the four films. Today it's probably this one in Melody Time where I don't have a huge amount of notes, but no, I'm happy to crack on with this, man.
I actually find this quite a pleasant experience because we've gotten used to watching these package films, but they're usually between 5 and 10 different segments, whereas
Yeah,
at least two of the films that we're talking about today are split just down the middle.
mhm,
It's two
yeah,
segments,
yeah,
which actually gives enough time to have to questionably actually have a narrative.
yeah,
Uh,
man.
you
Completely.
know, I would say this is the first of the package films that actually has a plot.
Yeah, and I think definitely, Callum, and I think it definitely benefits the film as a whole, where you just have sort of two longer, sort of 35-minute segments. I think it really helps because it helps to flesh out the characters as well, doesn't it? And I actually thought, to be fair to the film, like the two segments were fairly interesting, and to be fair as well, like I think shorter segments can work in a film, but for me, I think this film actually quite balanced the two plots well.
Yeah, and I would say the Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad
Oh yeah,
is probably
definitely.
even a huge step up from this.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we'll get into it. So, I find this quite easy to split down the middle. So, I have notes for Bongo and I have
Yeah,
notes for Mickey and the Beanstalk.
no worries.
So, if we want to start with Bongo, uh, I'll be honest. As you know quite well, I don't enjoy silent films, but I actually somehow find needless narration is in some manners worse.
Yeah,
The opening shot of this film is the bear climbing the circus, and then the narration says uh, he climbs to the top of the tent as people fuck my life as people watch, and just the abundantly obvious, dumbed down narration
Yeah.
was not for me.
Yeah, man, I agree with you, and I sort of think it's clear that these sort of package films are definitely aimed at a more younger audience. Maybe that's because of it's an attention span thing as well, because kids, I suppose, can't maybe their attention is sort of less involved in a longer picture rather than just splitting it up into segments. So maybe that was it. But yeah, when it's needless narration, when you can see what's happening on the screen, I suppose it can get quite especially as 18-year-olds, I suppose it's a bit unnecessary.
I mean, I would like to think that, as a 6-year-old, I could have ascertained that he's climbing the tent.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I suppose, like, do you find that the narration, would you rather just have no narration in general? Yeah.
I think, like open and close it with narration. Like when it basically turns into like a David Attenborough
Yeah.
documentary where he like,
Yeah.
where he like makes love eyes, like, and these like eyes are literally, sorry,
Yeah.
hearts are literally popping out of his eyes, and they're like, and then he spots a female of the
Yeah.
species, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
that's where I'm like, this has gone too far.
Self-explanatory. Yeah. I do think narration has its place, but no, I 100% agree with you, Callum. Like it is a bit it's narration overload here, isn't it? Maybe that's to make up for
Yeah.
the non-speaking characters.
Yeah, it is non-speaking characters, but I think it does a disservice to the actually, pretty great visual storytelling.
Yeah.
Like, namely, the meet cute between Bongo and the female bear, and I just feel that the interjection of the explicit voiceover just kind of kills the mood.
Yeah, and man, you mentioned like the stunning visuals there. I think this is probably one of the especially this segment. I think this is one of the best animation films that we've watched yet in our journey through Disney. For me, I think it's second to none really for the time. I think it was like 1947, I think, and no, it's fantastic, really, isn't it? And I really like the I think it's in this film here. Is it like, yes, the animation of like the lightning and how and stuff. I thought that was exquisite, man. I loved it.
Yeah, the animation quality is top notch, but we'll get on to the plot right now.
Yeah, go for it,
And
man.
we've talked about the love side of it. Let's talk about the abuse side of it, because
Oh man, yeah.
I find it quite problematic for a kids film to say that slapping your partner is the best way to show them affection.
Yeah, that was a confusing one. And maybe like I suppose in the film it sort of said like in the bear world, slapping's a sign of affection, but it's not a great message to send, is it? And also,
Yeah,
this film it is quite explicitly dark in the sense, if we see Bongo sort of abused in the circus as well, and in a similar vein to Dumbo, like I can respect the film for showing that and stuff, and I respect how it shows the dark sides behind the curtains in that aspect. But in regards to the somewhat well, I mean, somewhat domestic abuse, it shows in terms of affection, it's a flawed message, isn't it?
yeah, because I mean, yeah, they do caveat it by saying like every time they're like, oh, and now the partner slaps the shit out of the other one in the Bear Kingdom.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
if you think a child is too dumb, to watch a movie that you need explicit narration, like you saying that it happens in the Bear Kingdom isn't enough of a caveat for them to be like, oh, well, it can't happen in the human
it's a
world.
great point. It's
So
a great
like,
point. Yeah,
kids are just gonna be like going around to their like, I don't
in
know,
the
like P2
playground,
crushes and
just
just backhanding them.
I know, I know. There'll be a lot more detentions, I would say, in the spiking in this due to this film. But yeah, man, it was strange. Like, I would understand it even like if they had adopted certain things from the animal kingdom, in a sense that in some animated movies, we see animals like rub their noses together, and that's supposed to be them kissing. But this film is just outright slapping the face.
Yeah, because I mean, these films are obviously explicitly planned. You plan the story before you even do the storyboards.
Yeah,
So if someone was like, "Oh, and yeah," and then the climax of this piece of the film is going to be them slapping each other to show their love, I'd like,
yeah,
because that's what bears do. I'd be like, let's maybe not use bears then.
yeah.
If
A
we
great
if
point.
we really have to show them showing affection by slapping each other, let's not do it.
Let's not do it. Let's choose another animal.
Yeah. So did you have anything more to say on Bongo?
I just what one last wee section on Bongo Buddy was I actually love how smitten Bongo becomes with Lulabelle. I thought we've all been there, I suppose, and I thought it was a really nice moment. When he sees her in the waterfall, and as one of my favorite moments in the actual film in itself, because this segment's more of a romantic romantic comedy style, and I'm a huge fan of that, as you know, and I know you are as well. So it was sort of nice. It was sort of refreshing to see that take as well. And no, it was great, man. It was great, and it kind of reminded me of. Well, I suppose it is quite similar to a lot of these package films that have these sort of stories in there. We've seen. We'll mention a Melody Time about the ice skating, and even in Ichabod and his
I'm
adventures.
like, will I have like like Melody Time's just like, is this shit? I don't know. Like the only thing I really mention in Melody Time is Johnny Appleseed.
Oh, class! What a name. But yeah, no, nothing more for me. But I just yeah, I just love that bit of it. I'm happy to go on to Mickey and the Beanstalk if that works for you, man.
Well, I thought first we may talk about the somewhat horrifying transition between the two,
Oh
because
Jesus.
as we've mentioned, with the package films, they
Yeah.
when they sort of split it down the middle, it seems even more jarring and sort of like completely mismatched. This is going from like one story about a bear to one story about Jack and the Beanstalk. Like there's absolutely no connection, and they don't even attempt to like tenuously connect them. They're just like, oh, Jiminy Cricket, here's one of the stories, then go somewhere else and here's this other story. Like
Yeah.
it's a really bad setup, but also like it's just so bizarre because uh there's just this stranger in this little girl's house, and it's Edgar Burgeon who is narrating the piece, but they say that this is this little girl's birthday, and she calls him Mr. Burgeon, so this is not her father. This is
Yeah.
just a strange man
A
who has
random
entered into
dude.
her home on her birthday, like for her birthday party. There are no friends there, no parents there. It's just her, this dude, and his puppets. I would be
It's the puppets that
concerned.
creep. It's the puppets that creep me out, actually, because there's so, oh, I just something about puppets, man. It's the same thing people have a fear of clowns. Mine's like really realistic puppets. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's a weird birthday gift. A random geezer comes over to your house and reads you stories. That's weird, right?
yeah. I mean, the dad's not there to watch.
Mum's not there either. Like it's a weird one, man.
There's no friends there at her birthday party, which is fair because she's what, like 8 years old. You don't need to have a big birthday bash, but why are you having a man over and his puppets?
Exactly,
It was just bizarre.
Yeah, it was a bizarre one, man. It was a bizarre one, and if I'm not wrong, I think this was Walt Disney's final time voicing Mickey Mouse, which was interesting. I think I looked up on Wikipedia and it said he had more involvement in other work, so he couldn't dedicate the time to voice the character. So I thought it was quite a nice. He did well, I think, and no, it was just interesting. Trivia piece.
Yeah, I actually completely forgot that he was ever the voice of Mickey Mouse, and then
Yeah,
yeah, I saw that also. It was very interesting.
definitely.
It sort of adds historical context to this
Yeah,
film and
exactly, man.
importance.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Yes, so I'd heard the concept of this half of the film, and I thought it actually may redeem the package films, and I was wrong. And I realized I was wrong when I saw Donald Duck.
Like Donald Duck he's one of those characters. We've mentioned him before in our last episode and stuff, and we do have a particular disliking to him. And in this film, something about him. I know he has less. Well, I suppose his screen time compared to the Three Caballeros is a little bit less, I would say. But even at that, it's probably too much. But
Yeah,
no, like just that character, man. Just cut him from Disney lore. You know what I'm saying? It's not for me.
yeah. I mean, his presence is just poo stained branding.
Yeah,
Like
it is, man.
it just makes every film automatically less enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think he attempts to kill their pet cow for food at the start of the film, which that's not
No,
on.
fair though. Like fair enough. They're literally starving, and then Mickey can't bear to have the cow killed, but he can sell it. And I'm like, well, I mean, you're emotionally distancing yourself from it anyway. You may as well get some food out of it. Like you're literally
So,
planning on growing a beanstalk. It's not going to be. As the narrator said, it's not a steak.
yeah, I suppose so. But it's always curious to me that like Disney films, they never really make it clear as to what animals are actually like sentient beings and what ones are not, because like it's like for example, you wouldn't see Mickey Mouse have an idea. Although I wish this would be the case, where he'd be like, okay, Goofy, I'm very hungry. Let's eat Donald Duck. That would be a good idea, you know. But they don't go for it. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. But
Yeah,
you're all right.
I did think that that's what like Donald Duck was going for when he grabbed like the axe. Like I wasn't thinking, oh, he's gonna go kill the cow. Like I thought he was gonna like chop off Goofy's head.
Yeah, that would have been That'd have been interesting. I'm not the biggest fan of Goofy either, but he's not on Donald Duck level though.
I know. Did you notice in this film that like nothing that Goofy says actually lines up with his mouth movement? Like
Yeah,
that really pissed me off.
yeah, it's a little a nitpick, I suppose, but it does add up in the overall enjoyment of the film. And yeah, I mean, as for a normal man, with these package films, I don't have a huge lot to say about this segment, so I'm happy to go by any remarks you have, buddy.
Yes. So all that I really have left to say is to sort of just break down, the biggest part of this film, which is probably, its interpretation of Jack and the Beanstalk. So
Yeah,
they ascend this beanstalk and they encounter this harp that if they return to if they return to their village, it will be happy and prosperous once more. But you know, they break into this dude's house and then they try to murder him based on
yeah,
what like a harp that they just met told them. And like she could easily be a liar. And like Rick and Morty did a great parody of this in season 1, episode 5, which was Me Seeks and
oh,
Destroy.
oh yeah,
When
yeah,
Rick and Morty go on an adventure up a beanstalk and they're sort of like they get done for the murder of a giant. And I sort of liked seeing those parallels in something as old as this. But it's completely right. Like you've just broken into this guy's house and you're trying to steal food from him. You're trying to steal gold from him,
yeah,
and then you're like they do try to murder him in some regard. Like I don't remember what it was. I think they try to like trip him up or something, and then they eventually like throw smoke in his face.
yeah. I mean that giant is he's through the works, like, isn't he? He's through the ringer with these guys, and I know maybe the intention there is good, but like you said, Callum, really well. They don't know that that is fact, that like what the harps told them, so they could be done for murder at the end of this film if it all worked out well.
Yes, definitely. And that's sort of all I had to say on the film because I mean I don't know. It kind of just starts and ends out of nowhere.
Yeah,
It returns back to the transition point with with the puppeteer, and then the giant materializes in real life, and it's just like, have you seen a mouse anywhere? And then pisses off, and it's like the end, and I'm like,
yeah.
what?
I know, I
Like
know.
I'm always floored by where it decides to end because I'm like, well, you haven't like you've kind of finished the story, but then you bring back a plot element and then you decide to finish the movie.
Yeah,
Like it's
exactly.
just bizarre
That's the
in
thing about these.
almost every regard.
Yeah, man, that's the thing about these early Disney iterations, isn't it? Like the pacing's always off, and I get maybe that is an issue with package films, and the restrictions that are imposed upon it there. But um, I don't know. A lot of the endings of Disney films, like you mentioned, bro, they do feel very abrupt to me, and they, like you said perfectly, Callum, like they do end sort of I don't know where. I mean, we've spoke about that with our Snow White review as well, and other reviews. It is sort of a recurring theme, but I don't know. I'm glad to see it sort of get better because out of the other four films we've watched, I think this one's probably the most poorly paced for me personally, but. I don't have a huge more amount to say, buddy. I'm just happy to hop into ratings, man. I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, so if we're talking about this in the chronology of how we watched it, I would say up until this point, this is the best of the package films. And I think that is down to it's just splitting its narrative down the middle rather than trying to
Yeah.
attempt, between like 7 and 10 segments, because I just don't think that works. It doesn't give you enough time to connect with any of the characters.
Mhm.
And it was bizarre and weird, but I did quite enjoy it, especially the bongo section, even though it's in my mind quite problematic. So if we're going about our normal way of rating enjoyment versus quality, the quality of the films for the time and considering of animation and themes and newness, I'd give it probably an 8, and for enjoyment maybe a 6.
Yeah, man, that's fantastic, buddy. I thought you had some really great points in there, and for me, I would say Bongo was definitely my favorite section. Just purely because of the story there. It's quite an innocent sort of story, apart from the slapping and the animal abuse. But apart from that, it's quite a lovable story and about a boy meets girl, and I love that. I'm a big sucker for those kind of stories. So for me, enjoyment, I would say an 8. Quality, I would say a 7.5. It's certainly not a bad film. I think it's probably, like you said, up to this point, one of the better package films. But yeah, man, that was great, buddy. What's our next film then? Is it Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, or is it Melody Time?
Melody time.
Bless you.
I haven't gone yet, but like you know when you get like 90% of the way to the sneeze and it's like,
Yeah, I get
nah,
you.
fuck you.
Yeah,
I got that.
absolutely.
So
But yeah,
yes,
Melody
the
Time.
next film that we'll be discussing today is Melody Time.
Let's do it.
Uh, and from the title, I just have had this gut feeling that I was going to hate it.
Did you?
How did you feel like going in? Did you have low expectations?
Going in, buddy, I sort of thought like, in a similar way to Fantasia, this is for a very specific type of audience. But I think that in general, I think this film is leaps and bounds above Fantasia for me personally. And I had actually a very good time with this. Surprisingly, man, I honestly, I'm very surprised at my enjoyment for this. But what about you, man? Did you end up hitting it or?
Well, as we sort of talked about, with more segments, this film has 7 segments, and I would say I could probably reference 4 of them. So I have no idea what happened in the other 3. Maybe you can give me some insight into that later. But yeah, I agree with you. There are similar, pacing ideas, same as Fantasia. Seeing as it's mostly animation set to music. But I think the fact that all of the music here is lyrical rather than orchestral,
Absolutely.
aside from maybe 1 or 2 segments, I really think that I found it easier to connect with the film.
Absolutely, buddy. And I think what one segment that we had mentioned before the podcast that you enjoyed was the ice skating sort of animation which opens the film. And
Oh no! I did not enjoy it, Matthew.
oh, you did
I
not.
remembered it. I paid
Yeah.
attention to it. At no point was I like, yay, yay, Melody Time. I had to look down and check the title. I was never like, ooh, this is
I
this is
respect your
good.
honesty, brother. I respect your honesty. But no, I think these Disney films always, they always open and end on a strong sort of segment, and this is no different for me. I was a big fan of the ice skating couple animation. I think it was one of the better ones. Certainly one of the more memorable ones. Maybe because it opened the film, it's sticking in your head more. I don't know, but
Yeah. And we've sort of talked about, this concept of package films, especially in our last episode, if you want to go and check it out. But we obviously said that they made the package films because none of the stories had feature length potential. But I feel like they should have probably recognized that they shouldn't have been made at all. And one where I really felt that was Johnny Appleseed, because it manages to have dialogue unlike most of the rest of the film, and it still bores me probably to the same level as Fantasia.
you know what, the Johnny Appleseed one was an interesting one because I think this could have. I don't know if this was the case, but I think this would have been way better made as a short film rather than included in this because I think it's the most mismatched tonally throughout the film because this segment is sort of like a sort of like societal homage to a real life person. It seems Johnny Appleseed. I don't think I was his name. I think that's like a nickname, but yeah, Johnny Appleseed
Yeah.
and what a name, by the way, regardless. But yeah, it didn't really fit. I did enjoy it, to be fair, but I don't think it fit in the film, to be honest. It wasn't there in that quality for me.
Yeah, for me, I just don't think they should have made it.
Yeah,
For the most part, this film, but especially Johnny Appleseed, just because I mean, what was that film? It
it was
was,
a weird one, wasn't it? It was a really
he
strange
meets
one.
like he picks some apples, he meets a ghost, the ghost tells him to go make friends with animals, he makes friends with animals, it's over.
Yeah,
But that goes on for so long.
yeah. I tell you what, man, like Johnny Appleseed wasn't great, but I nearly shed a tear of sadness when Donald Duck appeared in the film. Oh fucking hell! I think the film at that point severely derails until like the Wild West segment. But I mean, Donald Duck, man, how did this character become so popular? Like,
I have no idea. And as we've sort of talked about these package films, and they just completely failed to hold my attention. I've never treated a film so disrespectfully as to be on my phone for 80 to 90% of the time. But
yeah,
honestly, I would just dip in and out like every 20
I'm the
minutes and like
same.
look up, and like just when I saw the three Caballeros reunited, it was harrowing.
It was, man, and I'm completely the same as you, buddy. And like we've sort of we've mentioned sort of segments that we've disliked there, and for me, my favorite one was, and I'd mentioned this to you earlier today, was Little Toot the tugboat. It was such a weird, it was such a strange segment, and but I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was really compelling, and I know I thought it was really great. There are a lot of like heart happening moments, how is a boat fathering another boat? Do you know what I mean? It's a weird one. But yeah, I mean,
Quite honestly, I looked up and went, "Oh, there's a boat," and then 10 minutes later, I went, "Oh, there's the Wild West." Like that's how I watched this
yeah.
movie.
Yeah, yeah. On the subject of the Wild West one, you know, there's a weird like live action again. They tried to mix the Three Caballeros live action Wild West, and that just the live action Wild West characters. It just felt really cheap to me. It just I don't know. Even we've mentioned the Three Caballeros live action. I that felt high budget to me. Like that felt like a lot of time and effort just went into the dance choreography, however boring it was. But this it just felt like so bland, so cheap. I don't know if you got that.
Yeah, again, I was paying so little attention to even notice that it was in live action. Took maybe 90% of the live action segment.
Yeah,
I
man.
have no idea. Like apparently, the Wild West segment is the longest one of the film. I have no idea what it was about. Like,
Yeah, like
can you shed
it's
any light on that?
yeah. So like there was this kid who got separated from his family and then was raised by a bunch of coyotes. But the most disturbing scene in this film is when this little kid is drinking milk from a female coyote with the rest of her puppies. Ugh, that's disgusting. But yeah, he turns into a cowboy, and I can't remember what his name is, but there's a fantastic little musical number here where it goes yippee yi yippee yo. He's the toughest critter west of the Alamo, and I actually it's really catchy. I caught myself humming that today. But no, that being said, I think the cowboy segment was probably one of my favorites there, along with the tugboat one. So I thought I had a good time with it.
Yeah, I would say the one that I paid attention to most, which I suppose is indicative of its acceptable quality, is probably the ice skating scene as you mentioned. So that was probably the one that I would give closest to my stamp of approval.
Yeah, man, completely. And have you got any other points, buddy, in that one?
No, as we both said, package films, there often isn't a lot to say.
Yeah, man.
However, I do have a lot to say about the adventures
Me too.
of Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
Me too, man.
Did you have
Yeah.
anything final to say on this film?
Nothing more from me, dude. I'd love to hear a rating for this one.
Yeah, so I would say this is a difficult one to rate because I also think, often the quality score we give is high, and then for me, usually the enjoyment one is very low. I'm gonna give them probably similar ratings. I'll probably say the quality is maybe a 5 or a 6. Like I feel like at the time, even this wouldn't have held audiences' attention. It wouldn't have
Yeah.
been well received.
Mhm.
It did like it was moderately successful, but it didn't do like Fantasia numbers, and it was by reputation a huge disappointment
Yeah.
financially. So I think even at the time this wasn't particularly impressive. So I'd probably say a 6 for quality, enjoyment 3.
Yeah, man, that's great. I respect that. And for me, like I said, I had a surprisingly really great time with this film. And so I would say both quality and enjoyment, I would give an 8. I think this is probably, apart from the film we're going to mention
Jeez.
next, this is probably my favorite package film. Strangely, I think there's some really weird, some really weird segments in there, but I think it blends together well. There's something for everyone's tastes. So yeah, I'm a fan of this movie for sure. But I'll tell you what, I'm a huge fan of Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. If you want to move on to that.
Yeah, let me just check how many notes I have for this because it seems like a lot. Yeah, quite a bit.
Let's do it.
Yes. So the third film for today is, as you said, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. And these two stories are firstly inspired by The Wind in the Willows, and then by The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which is now changed in name to Ichabod Crane for this film. Uh, and I actually had quite high expectations for this because I read a brief overview of the plot, and it sounded really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, how did you go into this?
Yeah, man. And I tell you what, this is probably the film that has surprised me the most out of the Disney canon that we've watched so far, and it's because the two segments are so strikingly different, but yeah, I think they blend together tonally very well. I think the slapstick humor is. I know we have been critical of slapstick humor in the podcast, but I think here for the most part this is slapstick humor done right, generally. For me personally, and it's strange because especially the Mr. Toad Wind in the Willows segment, it reminds me of Wes Anderson's Fantastic Mr. Fox, and I'm a huge fan of that film. I don't know if you've seen it, but I'm a huge fan of it, and that's probably why I love this one so much.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I'm culturally aware of it, and I recognize the parallels. Uh, so did you want to just leap into the plot then?
Let's do it, buddy. Let's do it.
So I assume this is quite heavily influenced by The Wind in the Willows, a sort of adaptation of it, but I haven't read it, so I can't speak to its accuracy. But the film opens, and apparently, we're introduced to this character of Mr. Toad, who seems quite financially reckless, and damages a lot of property and has to pay up in order to to fund repairs.
Yeah.
So he enlists his friend Mick Badger to start doing his bookkeeping, and I'm just wondering, like, what's McBadger stressing about? He gets like a stress headache and like keels over. But I mean, he's just helping Toad. He's just helping Mr. Toad with his accounts. Like, what's stressful about that? He's not the one having to pay it back.
Yeah, it's a great point, man. I'm just imagining if anyone's listening to this who hasn't seen this film, our comments in this are probably the weirdest comments ever. Like Badger's managing a Toad's financial accounts. Like in many regards, this is certainly one of the most weirdest films I've ever seen, ever, or segments at least.
Yeah, I would say so. And the weirdness continues, just because like his friends seem, they seem like weird overprotective helicopter parents, but they're just his friends. And
Yeah,
you know I just don't understand, like, the level of influence they have over him, because I mean, if I want to spend my money one way, I'm not gonna have my friends dictate how I do that.
it's a great point, man. It's a great point. And yeah, the friends are like, oh, he's being reckless with his finances again. I was just like, he's an adult. He can do what he wants, you know?
Yeah, and at one point they put him under house arrest and say you can't leave your house until you stop spending money. It's because the Toad estate is apparently a staple of the community. But
Yeah,
surely, if he needs to sell it on, it's still there. Like,
yeah.
it doesn't disappear if he sells it on for money.
It's a great point, buddy. It's a great point. And what one thing about this film, what I wanted to ask you was, is this like the first British inspired like Disney segment or film? Because it sort of feels like there's definitely a lot of Britishness in the voice work. And I don't know, maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, it did seem so. I've never felt like a huge British influence, and I sort of expected to see it carry over to Ichabod Crane, because I thought that was also maybe, I thought that was the tone that they were going to ride for the entire film. But
Hmm.
yeah, certainly this segment clearly has a huge British influence, because it is, obviously a British novel. But
Yeah,
yeah, I don't think we've seen that sort of influence as of yet in this Disney filmography.
yeah, man, it's great.
Yes, so we see that Toad sort of gets caught up in things. He sees a motor car and gets motor mania. And we see through flashback that he does a perfectly legitimate verbal agreement to trade Toad Hall for this bartender. Well, they like, he's behind the bar bartending, but he also seems to have like 100 goons. Like, I don't know where he's
Yeah.
getting all this money from. But, he does a perfectly legitimate verbal agreement with this guy.
Mr.
Trade Toad
Winky, I
Hall for
believe he's
for
called
his
it. The
for his
wonderfully named
oh,
Mr.
fantastic,
Winky.
fantastic. He trades Toad Hall for the guy's car. Uh, but then he's hauled in by the police, who suspect that he's committed a crime and stolen the car. I suppose because of his lack of good financial reputation. But his trial seems, to be built on complete hearsay. Like, the court does not have any evidence to convict this guy. They just
They're just like
hear the fact,
guilty.
like, yeah, one guy says he stole it from me, and then one guy says we had a verbal agreement, and they just believe the other guy. I
Yeah,
suppose it's either corruption, or it's just belief that Toad is that financially. But I mean, he's financially like irresponsible. He'll spend his money like willy nilly on different things. So it seems perfectly in character to like trade his mansion as collateral for a
exactly,
car. So surely that's
exactly.
more in character than just theft.
Exactly, exactly. And like just the whole court system in this, it seems so corrupted itself. Like Mr. Winky goes, I'm not even gonna call him that. It's just I'm just gonna the guy's just like, yeah, he stole it from me. He's a thief. And then the court's just like, guess we better just put him in jail then.
Sounds like a fucking genius to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Mr. Winky, reliable character.
Reliable, yeah, reliable guy. And you know what, one thing about the whole like police in this, the most weird, well, I don't know if we can criticize the police work in this film, But why would the police think a human-sized horse would be Mr. Toad's granny? Like, sorry, yeah, human-sized horse. You know when like the horse pretends to be his granny, but like
Yeah.
this toad is small, you know.
Yeah, I suppose there's some manner, there's some level where I can suspend disbelief.
Suspend
Like
disbelief, yeah.
like in Scooby Doo, where Scooby poses
Yeah,
a
you reminded me
Shaggy's
of that actually.
grandmother.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Yeah, it is a similar vibe, and we see that Mr. Toad is arrested, and as you said, the horse comes to rescue him, and he reunites with his friends, and Mr. Rat is just such a dirty dog. Like there's one line that he said that pissed me off. He says, "You owe a debt to society that you have to pay." Like, first of all, he was arrested for a theft that he didn't commit,
Yeah,
and that. The only debt that he owes is financial for damages that he's caused. But being in prison doesn't help that.
yeah, exactly.
He has to be out of prison to work off that debt.
Yeah,
Being in prison for a crime he didn't commit isn't gonna,
it's not gonna solve its
morally
problem.
absolve him.
Yeah, exactly, man, exactly. That's yeah, like Mr. Rat. What a rat. Am I right?
I wrote that exactly because I said, like right after, Toad convinces them that he is, perfectly innocent. It's actually Mr. Mole that apologizes for treating Toad badly, which he never did. But Rat just doesn't say anything.
Yeah,
And I
I know.
suppose, that they help him in the end. Enact this plot to get. Well, I mean, it's weird. Like, what, the piece of paper that they keep like,
Yeah.
trading back and like running after. Like, what is that? Because their agreement for him to sell Toad Hall for the car was a verbal agreement. So they have this like lease that is physical proof of the
Yeah.
contract.
Maybe
Which I
maybe
guess
he wasn't lying. Maybe he actually did steal it. Maybe he actually did steal it.
no, there's definitely there's either a verbal agement or a contract, but
Yeah.
like one contradicts the other.
Yeah.
So I
I
guess
assume they did
it
it
was a
off screen.
contract all along.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it was just a contract off screen. Fair enough.
We'll let it
I'll give
slide.
them
We'll let
that.
it slide.
Yeah, and
That whole like chase scene for the document, it is so like brutal because like the guy, Mr. Winky, like he tries to like decapitate these animals with a fucking sword, and then he gets an axe and tries to decapitate them. Like that is crazy, man.
yeah, fantastic.
Fantastic.
And I would say the biggest overarching theme of this entire segment is the fact that Mr. Toad's friends just don't like him. So why are you his friend? Because sometimes I find it weird that I only have notes going up to like 3/4 in or something. I don't have anything to say for the ending. But I think really the most important theme of this is the lack of trust and the lack of respect that his friends have for him. So like,
Yeah.
why are they his friends?
I don't know. Maybe it's their financial gain. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Because I mean, anytime he does literally anything, they like roll their eyes, go like, "Ugh, what a dickhead." I mean, I wouldn't love if my friends had that viewpoint about me.
yeah, like it's not a nice dynamic to have in a friendship, is it? And like I don't know. It's an interesting question, man. Like Toad, he seems a bit like quick to spend money, but he doesn't seem like a bad guy.
Yeah, aside from some light criminal damage,
Yeah,
seems
yeah,
like a solid dude.
yeah. Yeah, man. I actually don't have anything else to say about the movie. Weirdly enough, it's all my points.
No,
What about
no,
anything from
not
you?
nothing more for Wind in the Willows. So if you want to move on over to the Ichabod Crane,
Yeah, let's do it,
we
man.
can talk about that. So yeah, as we sort of mentioned, as you sort of mentioned earlier, these are probably the two least related stories in these package films. Because they don't even attempt to connect them. They're just like, fuck it, they're both books.
Yeah,
Like that. That's as tenuous a connection as they plan. But
yeah.
it seems weird to me that then sort of have both of them, like both of the titles in the title of the film. It's
Hmm.
the
Yeah,
Adventures of Ichabod and Ichabod and Mr. Toad. So you sort of would think that I thought it was going to be some sort of crossover where
yeah.
the two characters in the two stories intersect, which
Hmm.
I think could have been interesting. Like
Absolutely.
Ichabod Crane's just like running away from the headless horseman, and Mr. Toad like flies in on his plane.
Yeah,
I
that
think
would have been great.
something like that, to even attempt to tenuously connect them would have been interesting.
Yeah, and one thing about straight off the bat from uh Ichabod's Crane, I actually think he's a very compelling character. They sort of like subvert expectations. They sort of, even the narrator says this. So this isn't me assuming anything, but the narrator's like, oh, he's a very tall, lanky guy. Not like the most handsome guy, but like, he's very popular in the town, which was great to see. The ladies love him.
Yeah, yeah, I was glad to see that because I thought sort of the reaction initially of the Sleepy Hollow boys, the town bullies. Uh, what a
What
cool
a
name.
kind of yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
the
What a
lads,
gang.
what a guy.
I'm sure they do well on the streets of like modern London or something.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
that
yeah.
that sick street gang.
The modern
Uh,
streets of Belfast.
do we have many gangs here?
I don't know. Like, we don't really have gangs. We just have like paramilitaries, which is probably a lot worse.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's certainly shades of badness to both.
yeah,
Let's say, but yeah, sort of that their immediate reaction is sort of it's not positive. So I sort of was concerned that the perception of Ichabod for his appearance, that
yeah.
obviously again not our opinion. They sort of say he has an unusual appearance. He looks like a scarecrow. I
Mhm.
sort of expected the whole town to like
Yeah,
turn
yeah.
against him because of his appearance. So yeah, yeah, I agree with you that subverted my expectations.
Absolutely, man. And I'm just happy to go by your notes, buddy, and I'll fill in when I can.
Yes, so we've talked a lot about sort of an overbearing amount of narration, and I think it appears again here. And one thing that they say quite early on as Ichabod's being introduced and he's walking throughout the town, they're like, "Oh, and they haven't seen anyone like him, a human. He looks perfectly normal to me."
Yes, I know. And it's weird because like yeah, they say like we haven't seen anyone like him, but there's clearly been like a teacher, a head teacher in this place before.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess it's all in the nose, I guess.
No one knows. I think he's got like a certain exuberance about him. He's got like a certain whimsical charm, and I can understand why people like him. He seems like a sort of guy that if he existed in real life, he'd be very quirky and easy to get along with.
Yeah, I feel like the appearance side of it. Obviously, how your nose looks isn't a choice. So I would never judge someone for that. What I
Mhm.
will judge him for is the rat tail.
Oh, to be fair, mine was sort of like that today. To be fair, so I can't comment on it too much, but like,
No, Matthew, you have like the sumo wrestler top knot. It's like it's not a rat tail.
was this sort of reminds you of like Anakin Skywalker then? Yeah, those sort of
Well,
vibes.
I mean, this is sort of like I guess this is
A hot
braid
time.
like like
Okay.
you could generously call his hair a braid, but I would just call it a rat tail for comedic effect.
Yeah, it's a fitting description. It's a fitting description, and you know, um, it's weird because like at the start of the film, you don't really, and this isn't necessarily criticism. Like at the start of the film, you wouldn't really consider this guy to be, you know, get a bit of like to get scared easily. He seems like a very confident guy. But then up by the sort of the end of the film subverts your expectations, and you find out like he's got a horrible fear of just everything. Basically, he's a very scared man, and yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice for me personally. I didn't expect it to go down that road where like I think it's the guy Brom is like telling scary stories, and the Ichabod just like shits his pants.
Yeah, I
Basically.
suppose like you could argue that's either inconsistency in sort of character portrayal, or it's an indicative of portrayal of people exuding confidence whilst being terrified on the
Yeah.
inside. I'm going to
Mhm.
go with inconsistency because this is a
Inconsistent.
Disney
Yeah.
film
Yeah.
of this time. So I'm going to go. It was probably just them failing to be consistent.
Yeah.
Uh,
Fair enough.
but yes, so um, I you as you said, this character is the head teacher of the local school, and one sort of immoral side of this character that we see is that he treats one student better because his mother feeds him like roast dinners.
Yeah, like imagine how weird would that be if like you're just head teacher just pop by for some chicken dinner? Like that's a weird dynamic as well. And like I think doesn't he just like he abandons his teaching duties like just while he's just like dreaming about a life with Katrina. He just pretends like he has his gloves like on a book while he's just sitting
Yeah,
behind the desk just plucking feathers off a hat. I thought it was brilliant.
yeah, I'm not gonna say that he's like the best teacher. It seems like he's very well regarded as a teacher in the community, but he doesn't exactly have an exceeding amount of skill.
Yeah, I know, man. One thing about this film I really enjoyed, in a similar sense to how we spoke about Bongo, this sort of has like romantic comedy undertones to it with Ichabod's sort of oh, I don't really know what the word, like his love and affection for Katrina. Like he's clearly very smitten with this lady, and I thought that was really well handled in the film. But when you sort of think about it, like was Katrina leading him on in a sense? I don't know.
We will talk about it at the end of this segment,
We
but
will.
for right now, we obviously see the romantic competition between Brom and Ichabod, and yeah, just famously the best way to get a girl to like you is to kidnap her on a horse. Which is what
That's
Brom
always
does.
my go-to.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew, would you ever want to be like in a relationship with someone that keeps like making it very clear that they don't like you?
No, I would not. I
Like,
would not. Would you?
no, like I'm not a persistent guy, but I also don't think I think there's a line between persistence and creepiness. I think if a girl rebuffs you once, you can maybe change their mind. But
Mhm.
when she's like dancing with another guy, basically, pawning you off at every single opportunity, you're being an absolute dickhead, and she is having none of it.
Yeah.
Like you would think you would have the self awareness to read that and accept it.
Yeah, it's a great point, but it's a great, like, Braum is just non-stop, isn't he? He just never gives up on this girl.
Yeah, he just has he has no self awareness that this woman is not interested in him, or maybe she was the whole time. We'll talk about it
We'll
at
talk
the
about
end.
it. Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Uh, but yeah, you know, uh, sort of a weird cliche that I've noticed is the beautiful woman, and then she has like a 4 foot tall dad who's just like smoking a pipe, and he's just a gremlin.
Yeah, yeah. It's very similar to I was gonna say Cinderella, but her dad's never shown. But like no, it's a common, I suppose, Shrek with Fiona uh and her dad. But yeah, no, it's a funny one, man. It's a funny one, like.
Yes. So, speaking of the dad, Ichabod's doing his dance moves. He's called very graceful, but he seems to just be like throwing himself about the dance floor. Uh, you know, Not very graceful to me, but whatever.
Whatever,
I guess
whatever
I'm not.
works.
I'm not going to judge him. But as he's dancing with Katrina, he bends over while like mid sachet and lights Katrina's dad's pipe, which seems a bit arse-licky to me.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. That's a great point. At one point you think, he gets a slice of cake. You think, oh, that's nice. He's gonna give it to Katrina, or he's gonna give it to her dad. But he's just like, I'll just have a whole cake to myself.
Yeah, just like slops it
Oh,
down in one bite.
yeah, yeah. Speaking of
And
dancing, man, like I think you're pretty good. Like, anytime I've seen you, you've got the moves.
I do not. I mean, obviously we only started going to clubs once we turned 18 because we were good law-abiding citizens. Uh, and I always imagined like going to clubs and I sort of do like the two step or the one arm
Shuffle.
shimmy or the
Yeah,
yeah, a bit of a shuffle.
yeah.
So I was thinking I'm gonna look fucking tragic, but I mean that's just how everyone dances at clubs. I didn't feel uniquely uncoordinated. I
Oh,
mean,
you were good.
sort of what's the sort of move that you opt for?
I don't know, man. I'm not a huge like dancing guy. I don't know. I'm very awkward with my limbs, so I don't know. That's something about it. It's not for me. But if I were going to do it, I like the Running Man.
I have seen you do that.
I like
Uh,
that.
yeah, that is pretty. You are
It-
good
it-
at it. It's
oh,
particularly
thank you.
impressive.
It's a sort
But
of
that
dancing's
that
a sort
is
of thing. I think you have to be in the vibe for it. You have to be in the right mood, and you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's why I sort of hate any club that refuses to have a seating area or
Yeah, yeah.
like any seating like
Gives you no choice but
in
to dance.
Limelight. This only apply to people who live in Belfast, but at Limelight, you have to go into Katie's bar if you want to sit down, and it's very awkward because obviously you can't be like down in shots like whilst sitting in this like like fancy bar section. So yeah, it kind of sucks that there isn't just a main seating area.
Yeah, completely, man, completely. But back to Ichabod.
I guess. Yeah, so obviously this section of the film is based on the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and probably the most iconic imagery, iconic character uh, in that story is the Headless Horseman.
Hmm.
And I thought, when they got sort of three-quarters into the segment and they hadn't mentioned the Headless Horseman, I thought they had decided to forego that and just focus on the character of Ichabod Crane and his romance with Katrina. But it made me very happy to see that they did bring that character into the fold.
Completely, man. There's no reveal as to the Headless Horseman's identity, is there? No.
Not in this film. I don't actually believe so. I think that this story does actually adhere quite close to the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, but there's sort of been live action adaptations that have gone further into detail. I believe there's a Johnny Depp film called Sleepy Hollow, and there's a TV series that revolves around like Ichabod Crane waking up in the modern day. Because do you remember like in the 2010s when there was that huge craze of like an adult male with one quirk works with a sassy female police detective.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, this doesn't follow it exactly all of these, but there's like Lucifer, Eyes Zombies, the same, Castle, Sleepy Hollow, Beauty and the Beast. Like there are a shit ton of them.
Yeah, that was a big thing back then, wasn't it? That's weird.
Yeah, I mean it's still going, but thankfully they've sort of retreated a little bit. Like Instinct, like there are so many of them,
Yeah,
and there's some of my favorite TV shows, but it's a very familiar structure.
yeah.
Sleepy Hollow was sort of one of the first ones to do that,
I
probably post Castle.
That's really interesting, buddy. I always like to think. Well, I always like to think after I watch this film, the Headless Horseman was like maybe the old head teacher before Ichabod Crane, who has come back to haunt him or something. I think that's would be I don't know, it's an interesting thought. I don't know if it made sense, but
I don't know. What I would have liked was if just it shows a flashback to the Headless Horseman's origin, and it was just that his head got clipped off by Mr. Toad in his plane. And then he just like says, "Take that for
take
criminal
that,
damage,
bastard.
bitch,"
Yeah.
and then that's it. The
That is
end.
I changed that. That's mine. Yeah, well, go with that. That's even better than what I had to say. That's brilliant. Anything else
So
for you, mate? Yeah.
yeah, so after Brom has finished telling his horror story of the Headless Horseman, on his way home, Ichabod Crane is quite terrified, but he recognizes that that's all a fictional story until he encounters, of course, the Headless Horseman. Uh, and what have I written? Oh yes, the Headless Horseman chase is probably one of the best animated scenes in the Disney filmography up until this point, I
Absolutely.
believe. Especially, the incredible design of the Headless Horseman.
It is. It's a very like it definitely stands out, and it's quite an imposing figure, isn't it? It's especially like the black horse as well. I thought was a fantastic visual. But yeah, and that's one of my favorite sequences in the film, and it's yeah, this film's really underrated in my opinion. I hadn't heard of it before, and I'm really glad you had got us on this Disney bandwagon because I wouldn't have watched it otherwise. So it's I had a great time with it, man.
I mean, there have been positives and negatives to sort of doing every Disney film.
Mhm.
So far, pretty much negatives, but pretty much moving forward, we'll be going into at least like 60% are going to be good experiences, where I would say about 80% have been bad up until this point.
Yeah.
But there are some upsides in that. If we were just covering the most iconic animated Disney films, we wouldn't have watched this film. We probably would have disregarded it because we hadn't heard of it.
Hmm.
Uh, but quite honestly, this film ends with just the disappearance of Ichabod Crane. He goes into the forest, is attacked by the Headless Horseman, and he's never seen again. And I don't really think that this film works as a Disney film, because the message of the film is that if you're a good person, you're gonna die, and that if you're a bad person, you're gonna get the girl. Like, how does this teach a positive
Yeah.
lesson? Obviously, we should let Disney just have the opportunity to tell a good story rather than one with a particular message. But it's just not consistent with Disney's usual message of just desserts and comeuppance.
It's a great point, Callum, and yeah, the film sort of subverts our expectations of that completely, and credit to the film for doing that. I think it's a very like bittersweet ending in many ways because we don't really know Ichabod's Crane's sort of life after this. We always like to think when we review films on the channel, where does this go when the cameras aren't rolling, and you know, in this film, it's ambiguous as to whether he's alive or dead. It's just his hat is found in the forest. So, but no, I do agree with you. It's a very confused message for a Disney film. It doesn't actually feel like a Disney film, particularly to me. Oh well, the segment, sorry, doesn't feel like a Disney film. But yeah, like,
Yeah.
do you think he's alive or do you think he's dead? What do you think?
I'm definitely feeling the idea that he's dead. You know, obviously they show us an animated sequence of him with, you know, a wife and kids, and that's a potential of what might have happened to him. But I think sort of presenting that as a possibility and not confirming it makes like it seems to me that he just died. And then Katrina seems quite content with marrying Brom.
She
So
does.
like, what do you have any thoughts on that?
I always got the idea that him and Katrina, or sorry, Ichabod and Katrina weren't, meant to be. They weren't sort of cosmically destined to be together. But I don't know, like her and Brom, I don't know, like it's just a classic, subverting the expectations. So credit the film for that. And but yeah, she does seem quite happy. She doesn't really regard Ichabod much after that.
Yeah, it did kind of upset me to see sort of, you know, Brom act like a dickhead and then he still gets his way. You know,
Mm.
it did sort of seem very un-Disney for me. But I
Yeah, it did,
suppose,
man. It's a great point.
like if I'd seen Disney films up to this point and I didn't know what was to come, I would be like, oh, that's a new interesting avenue for them to take. They're not, always the family friendly idea of,
Mm-hmm.
the good guy gets the girl, the good guy, blah blah blah, is
Fair point.
successful, wins the day. But also, you know, knowing that they still continue to use that good guy wins message just makes this sort of like an anachronistic, uh, you know, example of like when they decided not to go with that formula. So
Mhm.
it kind of just sticks out as a weird
Certainly, man.
instance of message.
Yeah, it certainly is a very jarring message as well, and it definitely sticks out, like you said, brilliantly, buddy. Like in the Disney filmography, and to a certain extent, I think it can be applauded for that. But I suppose, like looking back, it is an unusual message, and it kind of goes against what everything Disney really. Sorry, it goes against everything that Disney stands for, I suppose. So yeah, it was a confusing one, but that being said, I had a fantastic time with this segment in particular, and I have nothing more to say really on that matter, mate. Do you have anything else?
Nothing more from me. So how would you rate this film?
So overall, as a film, we've talked about Mr. Toad, or sorry, we've talked about The Wind in the Willows, I think, with Mr. Toad and stuff. It's not as good for me as Ichabod. I think the Ichabod section is fantastic, and overall, though, I would say quality. I think it is definitely, as you said, brilliantly, buddy. The animation in the chase scene with the headless horseman is top notch, so far. So quality, I'd say a 9. Enjoyment, I would also say a 9. This is probably my favorite package film so far, surprisingly. What about yourself, mate?
Yeah, I agree. It's the best package film by far. And for the first time in this series, I will balance my enjoyment with the quality, and I will
Brilliant. Oh
say
yeah,
an eight for
that's
both.
great. That's great, man. I think you made some fantastic points in there, buddy, especially with like the mixed messages there and stuff. But did you want to move on to, potentially the most famous film of all time? Certainly the most famous Disney film of all time, like Cinderella.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, there could be an argument there. As I mean, Snow White was the first, so
Hmm.
that's in an essence, that was the first to define Disney's consistent tone, as we said, of sort of the good guy wins the day, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
The evil entity is killed off. That sort of structure, which I mean, this doesn't fully adhere to, but yeah, it probably does have the most classic. When people think Prince Charming, they're either talking about Snow White or they're talking about this film. So
Yeah.
I would definitely say that they're equally significant. And this is quite different to Snow White. It doesn't feel too familiar. Well, I mean, it feels familiar now. Obviously, watching it in the 21st century,
Yeah.
70 years after it was released. But I'm glad we're finally in the 50s. Like we're out of the 40s,
I know, man.
because the
I know.
40s were grim for
I
Disney
know.
films. Uh,
It's kind
and
of
like, I mean, like with a few short episodes, we'll be in the 90s, and then we'll be at
exactly.
Disney's peak.
Exactly. It's so weird that we mentioned that, buddy, because I have the exact same thing. For me, and I know maybe I'm looking too much into this, but you can almost feel that this is like a new generation. Like you can almost feel like this film is like in the 50s rather than the 40s. Even in the ideas it presents and how it's structured, it just feels like a totally new and refreshing take on such a similar story. Do you know what I mean by that? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It does feel very fresh, and especially with the animation. If we sort of compare, this has been the first real narrative film since, I believe, Bambi, I guess.
Bambi, yeah, yeah.
So it has been quite a while since we've seen a narrative based Disney film, and its closest parallel is probably Snow White. But I do think in the few short years since Snow White, it's come leaps and bounds, especially with the I mean, this film has beautiful animation, and like sometimes I think sort of the frame rate and the movement of the characters seems a bit stilted and awkward. But aside from that, like the actual animation of the frames is breathtaking.
Absolutely, Callum. Couldn't agree more. And I think the creators even have more confidence to display the leaps and bounds animation because of like the fast-paced action. We see it the cat and mouse dynamic, like classic Tom and Jerry style, and it is very like fast-paced. Cut, 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 and it is very well animated. I think that goes to show the leaps and bounds since Snow White, and I'm a huge fan of this film. Strangely, this is one of my favorites that we've covered so far, and I'm really surprised because you go into Cinderella and you think, I know everything's going to happen here. It's such a bland story, about boy meets girl and stuff, and happily ever after. But this is pretty great in my opinion. This really shocked me. It really surprised me because I didn't actually realize how character focused it was on Cinderella. We see like in a similar sense to Snow White, the Prince Charming of these films. He's in it for like 5 minutes, which is great. I think it works for this.
Yeah, and I think this film, as you said, it is incredibly character focused on Cinderella, which I think is an improvement on Snow White because
Yeah.
I feel like Snow White actually gives greater screen time to the dwarves,
Yeah, yeah,
whereas
absolutely.
this doesn't make that exact mistake with the mice and the cat and the accompanying animals, but it does give them a lot of play. Honestly, a
It
lot
does. It
more
gets
than I
repetitive
expected.
a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it probably gives them a similar amount of screen time to the dwarves, but it doesn't imbue them with the same importance. It doesn't try to make the mice an equal importance of character to Cinderella.
Yeah.
And we see that Cinderella is her family's servant, but what is her relationship to these animals? Because they seem to do they seem to do chores for her while she's doing chores for her family. But who's doing the chores for the animals? It seems that they're in subservience. In exchange for like food that they could probably steal. I don't. It doesn't seem like a balanced relationship to me.
One thing about the animals, like that we see that Cinderella is clearly in a very abusive household, and credit to the film for showing that sort of dark side to it. But this family, the evil stepmother and the stepsisters, they don't strike me as the kind of like animal loving family where they have like horses and badgers and dogs and everything and mice. Like they don't, and a cat. They don't strike me as that kind of like, oh, let's have loads of pets and look after them kind of family.
Yeah, I guess just the cat was theirs, the dog was Cinderella's, and then all of the mice are chased by Lucifer the cat. I mean, they seem like a cat family though. They scream,
Yeah.
we're insane. Uh, you know,
Yeah. The Lucifer cat, I suppose like it's sort of a character I expected to have like a sort of a bit of a development in the sense that they have like a Kylo Ren type vibe from Rise of Skywalker where that he becomes the good guy, and I kind of expected that from Lucifer in this film, and I wasn't entirely disappointed that I didn't get it because he's even by his design and his name he was called Lucifer for goodness sake. He's yeah, do you know what I mean?
yeah, I agree with you. I was sort of awaiting that moment of redemption, which unfortunately never came. But we've sort of talked about Cinderella's servantry to her family. Sort of as stated in the film. That's not my interpretation of it. But I understand that because it's her dad's house, and this step family is married into this wealth and this house. That I understand that she shouldn't have to do anything. But the servantry, as it's presented, is just doing chores. It's not. I mean, they describe this as an abusive household. I mean, they don't seem very thankful for her doing these chores. But honestly, at the time, it's unclear as to what time period this is. But it seems that if you're not royalty, your life sucks anyway. You pretty much like read a book or go to sleep, or I guess if you're in a relationship, have relations, or just go on dates, that kind of vibe. But if you're single, and your options are like
it
read a book,
sucks.
I would honestly like not mind, well, not scrubbing the floors, but I mean doing a bit of sweeping, like there isn't much else to do. I'd kind of welcome any activity really.
See, I think if you like, I think when you live in your own, I think you'll. If I walk into the house, I think it'll be spotless. Like, I think you'd keep very good care of your kitchen and your living room and stuff. Would I be right on
I don't
that?
know. I quite enjoy cleaning, but I'm not. I'm an organized person in some regards, but not. I'm not good with time management, so I don't think I would find the time to do it, even though I would want to. Like,
Mhm.
because people sort of put off cleaning because they don't want to do it. I'm more just like I have more important things to do, but I would like to.
Yeah, even your DVD collection, I'm a huge fan of that. Like, I love the way it's alphabetically coded and stuff. That's great. Love it. Big fan.
Oh, Matthew, don't downplay it. It's generally alphabetized, then it's alphabetized by series, and then it's organized by date. There's three subsections, Matthew. Like, don't dick
Sorry,
around here.
sorry, sorry, man. No, honestly, like, viewers, if you ever get the chance to get into Callum's house, you'll like. I don't know how that would happen, but like, especially for people who don't know us. But if you ever get the chance into Callum's house, his DVD collection is a marvel. It's a modern marvel. It's so good. I love it.
Oh wow, yeah, sure.
Honestly,
You
it's
know,
great.
uh, with its recent edition of Dora and the Lost City of Gold.
The most prized possession of the collection. What is your most prized DVD possession by the way?
Ooh, um, hmm. I
Maybe
mean,
maybe not your
probably
favorite movie, but your most like either maybe it's like the like some maybe you have a particular experience with the film or the DVD that you bought it or like whatever, man. What's your favorite you've got there?
it's maybe the complete collection of the Batman 1966 series, because it,
Ooh,
it sort of only came on DVD in the last few years, and I got it at a very reasonable price for all three series. I haven't watched a lot of it because it is sort of cheesy, and I at points couldn't get past the cheesiness of it. But
hmm.
I think if I watched it with someone, that would sort of elevate the experience. But it's been like fully restored. It looks incredible. The box set
That's
is
great, man.
incredible.
That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, I would say that's probably
Love
my
that, man.
prized one. Like, do you have any like collections that
I've
that
started
you
one
keep?
up just behind the camera, so I have. So I've ordered quite a few DVDs of like ones that we've covered, like Lars and the Real Girl and Her and stuff. I actually got Her, but oh, I would say mine is probably um, I don't know, man. That's a really good question. I quite like my Blu-ray of Jaws. I don't know. I'm a huge fan of that.
It's a good shout. Do you have anything else that you collect? I know you used to collect like pop Funkos.
Nothing, man. Nothing since. Just more leaning towards the DVDs now, man. To be honest, because like we've sort of mentioned in the podcast, I kind of feel like DVDs are going to be the new vinyl records. So I just want to get as much. And I don't know. It's the cases themselves. I don't know. Just having the idea of a case and stuff. I quite like that. I know you should like that as well. So trying to build a wee collection myself. But no, yours is fantastic. I love yours. Love it.
Well, thank you, sir. And as you mentioned, vinyl records. That's definitely where I want to move to next.
Oh yeah.
Because
Oh yeah.
I would love to have a vinyl record collection. What would be like the first one that you would pick up? What's the most integral album to you?
Oh, probably London Calling for me. It's probably the
Oh
first one to
wow,
pick up. What
yeah.
about you?
I'm picking up "Wish You Were Here" by Pink Floyd.
Oh, yeah. What's the? Is it Dark Side of the Moon? Is the Pink Floyd, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, I would say the three big hitters are probably the most famous would be The Wall, then Dark Side of the Moon, then probably Wish You Were Here. But Wish You Were Here would be my favorite.
Yeah. Is it just got everything? Is it like the full package? Just fantastic songs on
Well,
it.
yeah, because it's only about 5 songs, but everyone's a banger. Like the way you can sometimes have one album that has like 13
Yeah.
songs and you love like six of them,
Yeah.
or
Completely.
like it's like six of the best songs that you've ever heard, and then like seven of them are just like meh. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of Dark Side of the Moon has like a few meh ones, but I mean like everything on Wish You Were Here is like peak music.
That's great, man. That's great. Like I think I was in it, and this has got sidetracked, but it's an interesting chat. I'm sure people will be interested. But like for me, I quite enjoy going into it. Like even though I don't have a vinyl record player, just like going into HMV and looking through the old vinyls because they have a lot of great ones in there, man. Even like they have like movie scores and movie soundtracks, which I love as well. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I could pick up, a vinyl record of The Graduates soundtrack, that is probably the best movie soundtrack I've ever heard.
it's something about Simon and Garfunkel, man. It just makes absolute bangers.
Yeah, and obviously for Hal Maud, Cat Stevens, both
Yeah, yeah.
incredible.
Both
And I'm
incredible.
so glad we got to watch those movies in such quick succession because they
Absolutely.
were absolutely great.
Yeah, completely, man. Completely.
So if we want to gradually move back to Cinderella,
That's the man.
as the very famous, plot goes, there's the ball that's, intended to be held to, present the prince with worthy suitors. And the dress that, Cinderella intends to go in used to be her mother's. It's fixed up by her by her little rodent and bird friends. And I do have to say that that dress looked like an abomination, but she wore it well. But on the rack, it looked like shit.
Yeah, it's something about the bows, man. I wasn't a huge fan of, but I tell you what, I was a huge fan of. So, well, this is going to sound bad. I was a big fan of the stepsisters ripping apart the dress, not in the sense that I wanted them to. I just thought it was a really like brutal scene to include in the film. I'd actually like I wasn't gonna cry from it, obviously, but it kind of made me like
Yeah,
if I was in Cinderella, do you know what I mean? Like if I was in Cinderella's position, I can imagine like being absolutely distraught from that. Do you know what I mean, man?
yeah, and I think sort of the emotion. This isn't necessarily an intention of the film, but because we're aware that this is her mother's dress, that this film doesn't really delve into her relationship with her mother, but I feel like that's something that's probably elevated in the live action film with Lily James because
Mhm.
Haley Atwell plays her mother, and we see how that relationship was before the death of Cinderella's mother. So I feel like if we had seen more into that relationship in this film, I would have felt more about that scene. But even knowing that she's like sort of losing a treasured possession that used to belong to her mother,
Mhm.
it is emotionally raw.
It is, man. And was there an Enchanted with Amy Adams? Is that like a Disney film or is that inspired by Cinderella or what's the deal with that?
Yeah, that's a Disney film, and yeah, it is. It's a subtle blend of Snow White and Cinderella. She sort of has the Cinderella dress, and sort of but it is mostly inspired by Snow White because she has sort of the Prince Charming, but it's used for comedic effect. He's kind of like a bumbling idiot, and then you have sort of her uh, the evil queen rather than the wicked stepmother. But there is sort of a healthy blend of those two characters
Yeah, man,
and those two
because like
films.
ever since we watched her, like I've been a huge fan. Like I think Amy Adams is fantastic in that, and I actually oh, is that going to be included? Like, are the live action adaptations going to be included in this series,
Uh, in which series
the Disney series?
that we're doing?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I thought we covered the Disney animated films first, and then sort of do Disney Toon, then like DreamWorks and Blue Sky, and then
Mhm.
we could maybe circle back to the sort of live action
Absolutely.
adaptations. I mean, I definitely want to cover like Mulan, the live action
Oh
Mulan when
yeah.
it comes out, because I believe it's been pushed to August now,
Mhm.
or potentially later. So we'll talk about that obviously as a new release. But yeah, other ones I thought maybe we could leave just to sort of
Yeah.
keep trucking with some animated films
No
because
worries.
I feel
Yeah,
like
that'd be good.
I mean was like Snow White the first animated film that we had talked about?
In like in terms of Disney or just in general.
Like at all?
Uh, apart from like Toy Story, I suppose, and like our Pixar series. Do you mean
Oh
like?
yeah, yeah, sure.
But
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
know what you mean. Like yeah, it was the first like Disney film we talked about. But yeah, man, that it seemed like it was crazy. Like our Toy Story episode, I think it was like episode 7. Like that is a year ago, man. That's crazy. And like, when was Toy Story 4 out? Was that like a year ago as well? It was like summer of 2019.
Yeah, I think it was July.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. Like that's wow. Like that year's just went in so quickly, man.
Yeah, but I would say that this first half of this year is trucking by slowly.
Yeah, I think so. But maybe it's because, do you think if it wasn't like, quarantine and stuff, it would have went in just normal pace for you?
Yeah, I feel like it would have been, we would have obviously been preparing for exams
Yeah.
before quarantine happened. So yeah, I think that I think the time would have moved probably quite quickly as we sort of we're going down to like the mad dash of the revision for those
Yeah.
exams. Uh, but you know, I'm looking forward to the rest of the new releases of films this year. Sort
Yeah.
of going back to Toy Story coming out just a year ago. I'm looking forward to the rest of the ones that are coming out this year.
Absolutely. I actually, you know what I really miss? Like, I really miss doing, like, I'm really enjoying the podcast we're doing now, but I miss the days where you and I go to the cinema, sometimes with your family, sometimes with us too, and then we like come back to yours and record a podcast on it. Those are my favorite times. Like, it's weird because one of my favorite podcasts we've done, and it's a really weird one, was our Birds of Prey review. But I just had such a great time with that film, and it was just fun like recording it straight after we'd seen it because our thoughts were raw and fresh and stuff. And we're probably always when we do that, we're probably way too generous at the films. I always find, especially
Yeah,
with Dark Phoenix. But like,
yeah. Whether we're too generous or too harsh, like our initial reactions are usually wildly inaccurate to like
exactly,
two
yeah,
days later.
completely.
Because I feel like I was too harsh on Joker, slightly too harsh on Avengers Endgame, and then probably too generous on the rest. Dawn and the Lost City of Gold nailed it though.
Nailed
I
it.
think I mean retroactively I would give it a 10 out of 10. I think I maybe give it like a 9 or something, but I
Yeah.
would give it higher because
You know what it is, man?
it just slaps.
You know
It's
what it
such
is, man? Like, I can't wait until like when you think about it, I think it's going to be like it's not too far away, like another month away, and we'll hopefully be back to doing that. At least recording podcasts on new releases, with Wonder Woman and Mulan and stuff, and Black Widow. Like, I can't wait to get back into like new releases again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like bars and pubs are opening in 3 days, so I mean, cinemas are probably going to follow soon after. I may not want to hit up a cinema
Yeah.
immediately,
Yeah.
but there's certainly at least for the next month or so a lot of new releases being put online. There's this Friday there's Hamilton. Next week there's Palm Springs. 2 weeks after that there's Kissing Booth 2. I know we're both you know,
So
thrilled
stoked.
for that. You know,
Yeah.
can't wait. 10 out of 10.
But no, I think it's good
I
that's
will
that's
hit
an
that
option.
film.
It's good that that's an option though. Like, we've talked about, as much as we disliked Artemis Fowl, it was good for that to be put on a platform where it's easily accessible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I didn't have to individually pay to watch that because that would have been painful. Because I'd actually planned to see that in the cinema, and I'm glad that I didn't have to endure that.
Yeah. No, man. Me too.
Because I think I did manage to watch it in one sitting, but I feel like if I'd been like, I feel like if I'd been subjected to watching it in the cinema, I probably would have left.
Oh yeah. Like, I do. I've never walked out of a film before. That one would have pushed me close, I think.
Yeah, I also haven't because I've stuck it through. I don't think I've ever seen like an abomination so bad that I could have left. Into the Woods came very close, but I was like 10 years old, so I couldn't leave. But if I saw Into the Woods these days, I probably would have. I don't think I've seen some genuine trash like on Netflix. But I mean, right now I'm watching Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging, which
Any
is
good?
well, from my childhood, I've seen this film like 5 or 6 times, and now as I'm watching it as a bitter old man, uh, it's like cringy, but like past the point where it's like funny,
Hmm.
and the main character is just like an egomaniac psycho who's like obsessed with herself and resents anyone else being happy. And I think you're meant to empathize with her. Like I'm quite confused.
Yeah.
Like her dad's played by Alan Davies, from QI, like the loveliest British man in the world. And
Yeah.
she treats him like absolute shit. Like he moves away to New Zealand and she's fucking buzzing. She's like, oh, one less parent to deal with. Now I can hire out a club for my 15th birthday. Like
Oh, dude.
she's an idiot. Like she's literally 14 becoming fit. Like I'm sorry, this has just turned into Angus
Oh,
Thong's
it's
Perfect
fine.
Song,
It's cool.
but
It's cool.
but she's 14 turning 15, and she's like, oh my god, my life. Uh I can't even. I don't have a
Yeah.
boyfriend. I can't hire a club for my 15th birthday. I'm like, oh my oh my
Get
god.
your
It's
priorities
like
straight,
I
woman.
mean, it's like most 18-year-olds in Northern Ireland can't afford to go to a club for their 18th, let alone hire one out for their 15th.
Yeah.
And I don't know. She just seems like the film ends and it's such a bizarre message because she gets everything that she wants. Like she doesn't deserve any of it. Like she's a
Yeah,
terrible person.
I know.
And it just seems like a bad message to send to teenage girls that you can act that. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
to teenagers in general, that you can act so petulantly and then you get everything that you want.
yeah. Like the way you mentioned how Angus, what is it called again?
Angus, thongs, and perfect snogging.
Angus Thong is a perfect song. The way you mentioned sort of you don't look at it as highly anymore. I kind of worry that that's gonna happen with my sort of childhood guilty pleasures like Aliens in the Attic and stuff. Like I absolutely adore that movie in the same way you adore Dora in the Lost City of Gold and stuff. So I don't know. That's why I'm a bit hesitant to rewatch that, just in case I've lost the childhood charm of it. You know what I mean?
Well, I think I think I could get past like the sort of teenage like adolescence like like the annoying cringy side of it, if the character was a good person.
Hmm.
So I think with Aliens in the Attic, it's just whether does the humor hold up, and I think it probably would because you can go, oh, I mean, this isn't very funny, but it's kind of funny that it's bad.
Yeah,
I feel like it would, whether you either find it genuinely funny or you find it funny in that sense. I think that there would be fun to glean from that kind of film. But I'm struggling. I'm struggling with Angus Thong's A Perfect Snogging. Honestly,
yeah,
I've
yeah.
I'll finish it when we're when we finish today. But it's going to be kind of rough, honestly.
Do you want to head back to Cinderella then, buddy? That was a good wee discussion there.
I mean, I guess, yeah, sure. Uh, I mean, this is what the viewers come for: nonsensical discussions about irrelevant films.
I mean, last episode they got to listen about Jake Johnson, so what more do you want? The lovable Jake.
Yeah, and then we talked about accents for like 15 minutes, and like discrimination against the Irish actors. Like, did you have to cut? Like, how was that to listen back to
It's
and
not too bad.
like
I actually enjoy,
edit?
in some regards, I actually enjoy our like off the cuffs chats about Jake Johnson and accents more than like package films. Do you know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah, definitely.
but no, like it wasn't too bad. But it wasn't too bad. Like I don't think there should be much to take out of this one either. So it shouldn't be too bad. But back. Do you want to head back to Cinderella then, dude? Yeah.
Yes. So as we mentioned, there's the big ball. Cinderella hasn't been able to make it because her clothes have been torn up. Another hugely iconic part of this film is the fairy godmother,
Of
sort of
course.
similar as to how we see the blue fairy in Pinocchio. This
Mhm.
is a similarly presented character, and she, imbues Cinderella with all these limited time powers. She gives her a beautiful dress, glass slippers, a carriage, and she says, "I'm afraid this can't last forever." And I'm thinking, it definitely can. You're fucking magic. Like, drop the benevolent bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
like these fairies are like, oh yeah, I'll give you my magic with one price.
Yeah. That's just bullshit, isn't it?
Like the blue fairy in Pinocchio is like, oh yeah, I'm like an omnipotent fairy who can use my magic to turn you into a real boy, but only if you really earn it. It's like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. You know, like either like it's just such a weird imbalance between them being liberally handing away magic to people who deserve it, but then
Putting in the
there's this
price.
one weird caveat that definitely
Yeah.
doesn't need to be there, and it's
Yeah.
just to add tension for the film.
It's a great
But
point, buddy.
it just makes them seem like a bad person
It's a
because
great,
they're like, yeah, I'll do this thing in exchange for this other thing or with this limitation.
it's a great point, buddy. That being said, the Fairy Godmother song is generally like I actually generally really like it. It's probably my favorite in the film. And in regards to like crazy characters in this, I don't think there's a character crazier in my opinion than Prince Charming's dad, the king of the kingdom. This guy he tries to kill his own staff, pretty much.
Yeah.
There's a one line I quite enjoyed when he's like, where does the prince get his crazy romantic ideas? And I just put, the king should really take a look at himself because the whole romance in this film starts because of an arranged marriage, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly, because he has this weird obsession with having grandchildren. But I mean, he doesn't seem like he's getting that on an age. Like the prince is probably like, like he says, like, oh, I'm gonna die soon. Like, in these films, like it always turns out that like, the female heroine is like between 16 and 18. So I mean,
Yeah.
Prince Charming's gonna be no older than like early 20s.
Hmm.
I mean, sometimes it could be like Cinderella's 18 and Prince Charming, the man of her dreams, is
50.
46. Like that, yeah, like that is possible. but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say early 20s. So I mean, the king's probably in his 60s, but I guess in this like weird ass world, that's set like however many 100 years ago, the life expectancy maybe like way down,
Yeah.
which is fair. But yeah, as you said, he does seem like a crazy romantic, and I mean, there's one point after the ball, and we'll return to the ball, but after the ball, he says to the Duke, like that he's in league, that he was in league with the prince all along, and then he tries to cut his head off with a sword. How exactly, how exactly is it treason, to work with the prince?
Yeah, like the prince is by definition like part of the royal family, so he's just doing his job.
Yeah, I just need to put my wireless charger on.
No worries, man. But yeah, no, I do completely agree with you, buddy. And you know what? One thing about the whole ball scene, like I actually really I really identify, not maybe identify is not the right word, but I really sort of you connected with the Prince Charming's and Cinderella's sort of love at first sight sort of romance, and I thought it was really nice. It was a like lightning strikes once kind of love there, and I thought it was fantastic because you know we've talked before about like romantic just romance in general in Disney films. I think this is definitely romance done right for me.
Yeah, I'm just making sure that
You're all right. No worries, man.
charges.
No worries, man. But yeah, by the way, everyone, there's a new playlist in the playlist section. It's a Jurassic Park franchise playlist. So if you haven't seen our Jurassic Park videos, go check them out in that playlist. Hopefully, you guys will enjoy it. Just while
Yeah, I was gonna make that, but how did you phrase it? Like, was it Jurassic films or something?
I put Jurassic Park franchise, so it wasn't the best worded, but I just because I didn't know, because it's weird because they are technically two different franchises, aren't they?
Yeah, I can currently see you, but you won't be able to see me if that's all right.
No worries, man. No worries.
Just
I just hear
just for
your
a little bit.
amazing voice.
Okay. So you mentioned love at first sight, and we're going to have this discussion again because there are different contexts to this discussion. We've talked about probably the most in-depth discussion was when we talked about 500 Days of Summer
Yeah,
in rom-coms part 2. Watch it. Highly recommend. Must see movie mates.
must say.
Check out that playlist. Watch all of those. Love it. You'll have a ball of a time to reference Cinderella, but we sort of need to talk about the love at first sight, which is presented in this film, because I understand and somewhat believe in the idea of first sight, but I do think that people misconstrue it as love at first sight. They misconstrue love at first sight as everlasting love at first sight,
Mhm.
which I don't believe is possible. Uh, unless I'm convinced otherwise. But it seems to me that you can fall in love at first sight. But when people fall in love at first sight and then go, and I will marry them,
Yeah,
I'm like, well, it's possible that you fall in love with other people at first sight. Falling in love with them at first sight doesn't mean this is the only person I will ever love. They are my true love. It means that you just had a chemical reaction the first time you saw them and you're in love with them.
yeah. I suppose that's a great point, buddy. You know me, and I'm sure the viewers know at this point. I'm a sucker for those kind of things, and
Yeah,
I suppose there is a difference between loving someone and being in love with someone. And I think there is probably an important distinction to be made there. The prince maybe is in love with Cinderella, but he doesn't love her. Do you know what I mean by that? He's
yeah,
in a similar sense to Tom and Summer's relationship in that film. Tom is in love with the idea of Summer. He doesn't necessarily love her because we see they have a lot of disagreements, and I suppose it's a similar idea here. We never really see Prince Charming and Cinderella together really, apart from the ball and the ending. So it is an interesting one, man. But as I said, I'm a sucker for those things, so I'm just there to soak it up. I'm a huge fan of that.
yeah. I mean, I would understand that, if the Duke has to go around, testing these women with the glass slipper, and then the conclusion at the end is that, they go on and pursue a successful relationship.
Yeah.
That's good to me. But then if they're like, oh yes, this woman that he met and danced with for 4 hours, he has decided that she will be his bride. I mean, yeah, that sort of just baffles me because I mean, you don't marry every person that you have a successful relationship with, let
Mhm.
alone that you've just met and feel some affection towards. you know, it just feels like a recipe for disaster. But I mean, you know, in those times they're probably living to 40 anyway.
Yeah.
You know, he'll probably be off fighting some war. You know, they'll probably never see each other anyway. So overall, successful marriage. 2 thumbs up.
I suppose that maybe again it's due to the, we always talk about these, the Prince Charming character never has as much screen time as you might think, and maybe that's due to like a lack of development on Disney's part there. But no, I can see what you're saying. I can see what you're saying for sure.
Yes. So as we mentioned, you know, a tool to find the bride for the prince is the glass slipper, which they go around the kingdom trying to fit on every girl. And you know, the idea that he says, you know, the Duke is saying that, you know, he will you know, test the slipper, and whoever it fits first will be the prince's bride, regardless of whether it was the girl that he danced with. If the slipper fits, they're his bride.
Mm-hmm.
So just the first person that happens to have Cinderella's exact shoe size, you know,
That's what I put.
will be the prince's bride,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's just bizarre.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, anyone who shares the exact same shoes as a Cinderella will fit the glass slipper. So it's just. I suppose it's just coincidence. That's what I mean. It is. It's meant to be because it was cosmically destined that Cinderella was to have the same. Was to be the first one to fit the slipper. So I can let it slide in that part. But no, I do. I know what you mean, man. I know what you mean.
Yeah, but like, just imagine that the Duke is like out there testing people, and then the first person that it fits is just some rando, and he brings that to the prince, and he's like, "The fuck is this?" Like, did the prince never
Yeah.
think like give like a vague description? Like, even if he had said like blonde, like Cinderella is the only blonde character we see in this film, so that would instantly, you know, rule out 80% of the women in the kingdom. You know, just
Yeah.
say look for a blonde with this shoe size, you know, and then immediately the search is narrowed incredibly.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point, man. It's a great point. And we've mentioned sort of Cinderella's animation and her blonde hair makes her stand out. And I think that's one of the biggest praises I can give for the film. It's clear that she is animated to be like to stand out with her beauty and stuff. And I thought that was fantastic because it sort of gives you a sense of importance to her character, and the film sort of goes to show like she's a lot more than just her. As the saying goes, I'm more than just a pretty face. I'm not just a pretty face, and I suppose that stands true for Cinderella. She is quite a deep character and stuff with a deep background. So I love that personally, man.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I would say, you know, what I would say one of the biggest, you know, coined phrases from this film is like, "Ooh, the slipper fits," which is, you know,
Mhm.
it's a metaphor for, you know, something being perfect, and, you know, being perfect. And I mean, I just said the same thing twice. It's fine.
It's fine.
You can edit around it. You know, but you know, something being a perfect fit is always likened to the glass slipper in this film.
Mhm.
And it's so integral to the plot of this film that, you know, the slipper fits Cinderella perfectly. But if it fits her so perfectly, why does it keep falling off her foot?
It's a great point. It happens quite a few times, if I'm not mistaken, as
Yeah,
well. So,
I mean, if this is such a, you know, like one-to-one, you know, version of her foot that this couldn't possibly have fitted anyone else, how is she leaving it behind the ball?
yeah, it's a great point. And one thing I was confused of, like, if the spell wore off, how does she still have a glass slipper in her pocket?
See, I did question that initially. I was going in, you know, with, oh, if the magic runs out at midnight, you know, how does she keep the slippers? But she, you know, when she's left with the one slipper at the end of the night, she sort of looks at it and, you know, says out into the world like, "Thank you." So I think that the fairy godmother left them as a
Mhm.
gift.
Maybe, yeah, it's a good point actually. Man, I hadn't considered that. Was yeah, good point.
But yeah, I mean, this film isn't like hugely eventful. You know, I don't really have anything else to say. You know, I feel like its bare bones are very popular, you know, cultural knowledge.
Absolutely, man. And I actually looked in this film. Apparently, there's a Cinderella 2 and a Cinderella 3. So I'm looking forward to getting into them to see where they go with this character because I think there's a lot more to be developed here. So I had a huge time, I had a great time with this, man. A huge success, I thought.
Yeah, I know that the third film is called, I believe, like A Twist in Time, and it
Yeah.
involves time travel,
Ooh,
which I'm quite
that
looking
could be
forward to.
cool. That could be cool, man. I'm
But
interested.
what's weird is that it's from 2007, so like 57 years later, they've done the third film.
The sequel we've all been waiting for.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, you know, when these films end with like happily ever after and that's it, you know, that's enough for me. You know, this is a fun, quick jaunt, you know, one
Mhm,
look at a part of their life. And, you know, it's usually quite satisfying for me. You know, I feel like
mhm.
doing a sequel to this was probably a cash grab.
Yeah, I suppose so, buddy. I suppose so. And like, it's a weird one because our two favorite movies, About Time and 500 Days of Summer. I would say we'd both agree that we wouldn't want sequels to those films.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I feel like, it is much better for the audience usually to, look forward and imagine like how that universe continues. Because usually when a movie is actually delivered about how the world continues, it's usually disappointing.
Hmm. Although that being said, if there was a Dora and the Lost City of Gold sequel, I think we'd both be first ones in the
Oh,
cinema for that one.
thrilled, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
because I'm not like, she's so young in her in her adventuring days. She's but like I think she's like 16 or something in
Yeah,
in
there's
that film.
plenty of years to
Uh,
go.
yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of untapped potential, untapped adventure potential with that franchise. But that doesn't come with sort of a love story that like seems to span years in one movie,
Hmm.
and you're satisfied with the ending of it.
Yeah.
Dora and the Lost City of Gold, I'm like, yeah, get me into this universe again. Can't wait.
I know I could get a few more sequels out of that. Like that would be fun.
I mean, I don't know how well it did financially, and I assume most adults didn't enjoy it.
I'll have a wee
But
look. Yeah.
we're some of the rare few that thought it was absolute genius.
Okay. Have you
I
got any?
mean,
Go ahead, man.
quite unironically, it probably was my favorite film last year.
Have you got any predictions for the box office? So I'll give you. So the budget was $49 million. Have you got any predictions for the box office?
I'm gonna say 120.
Mate, you've absolutely no way. You've nailed it.
Seriously?
120.6. You absolute
Oh
hero.
man. Because I just thought it was probably a marginal success, and then you have to like double for marketing. So I was like, right, it would have been 100 with like budget and marketing. So I thought probably a marginal success.
Mate, I
So
completely
120.
smashed that. You smashed that. Any predictions for Rotten Tomatoes rating?
Like 56.
84. That's pretty high.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was expecting uh derision from Rotten Tomatoes,
Yeah.
but I suppose that they were just able to assess what we got from it, which was the incredible sense of self-awareness.
Absolutely, man. Like I'm gonna have a week. I know this is we haven't even went into Cinderella ratings yet, but I'm just gonna see if there's any been sequel announcements for this yet.
I mean, like Dora and the Lost City of Gold would be 100 times worse if it took itself seriously. If they were just
Yeah.
trying to do a live action adaptation of the Dora the Explorer, animated series,
Mhm.
and it's not that. It's the grown up version of her, and the film is taking the piss out of how that character is presented, which
Yeah.
I never expected. Like, I wanted to go in and watch a bad film, and then I was surprised when it came out, and it was like genuinely good, like unironically good.
Yeah, I know. It's one of the biggest surprises I think in film history for us, to be honest. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, maybe when I'm watching it and the poop song comes up, I might not be jazzed, but other than that,
Isabella Moner says she wants the sequel, so hopefully we'll get one, man. That'll be fun.
I mean, she is a rising star. So I mean,
Oh
if
yeah.
she actually, like the reason that these usually don't go ahead is that the main actress becomes too big a star and then she doesn't want to be involved. But I mean,
Mhm.
if she's actually, if she actually wants the sequel and she's doing very successfully and people like her persona, I think it's a sure thing probably.
Yeah, absolutely, man. But did you want to head into ratings for Cinderella then, buddy?
Yeah, so once again, I think that my enjoyment, like they are definitely on an upward incline. The quality of these films and my enjoyment. So I would say my quality, the quality of the film and my enjoyment are again quite similar. The quality is probably a 9 out of 10. For the time and the originality of the story. I mean, obviously, most of these stories are up until this point are based on other literary works. This is based on the I assume this was another Brothers Grimm tale because it's quite
Mhm.
horrific in some regards. In that to try and fit into the slipper, the evil stepsisters like cut off their toes,
Oh yeah.
to try and fit into the slipper, and
Mhm.
then the book ends with like all of the step family being like eaten by crows.
Mhm.
So it is kind
Brutal.
of grim in some regards.
Yeah.
So for its originality, I guess adapting that source material and making it family friendly, I have to respect and give a quality of probably 9 and an enjoyment of 7.
That was great, man. I agree with everything you've said. I think you had some fantastic points in there, mate. And yeah, just because of like the really sweet meet cute and the sort of um meant to be like cosmically destined kind of romance it presents here, and also because Cinderella is generally like a very compelling character. I'd have to give it a 9 out of 10 for both quality and enjoyment. This is probably one of my favorite films we've watched so far, and I'm glad I checked it off the bucket list because it's one of those films where it gets referenced so much, but I haven't actually seen it to fully comprehend the references. But no, this film's fantastic, man. I had a great time with this.
Yeah, great. So,
So
did you want to wrap up the? Oh no, we could discuss future episodes
future
if
episodes,
if that's
yeah.
what
So what are we going to be
you're going
talking about
into.
then over the next few days?
So then the next episode, aspirationally, we will be talking about the 4 Indiana Jones films. Uh, uh, as of recently, we haven't really watched that many films in such a short period because I mean that's like 4 2-hour films, so that'll be an endeavor to get all of those watched. But I'm really excited to watch
Me
those
too.
films, and I hope you are too. And
Absolutely, buddy.
following that, we will be continuing our Disney series. Get one step closer to getting to the peak of Disney, which is
Oh
the
yeah.
'90s. But we're watching some absolute bangers.
Oh
We've
yeah.
got
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, and Sleeping Beauty. So I'm very much looking
Classics,
forward
man.
to that. Seems like an
Classics.
absolute set list.
Absolutely. So yeah, I would say I'd probably expect the Indiana Jones podcast maybe like later on this week, maybe like Sunday or something, man. If we just
Yeah, I would
record on
say so.
Saturday.
Yeah, maybe recording Saturday. Yeah.
No worries, man. But yeah, thank you very much, Callum, for today, buddy. I had a great time, and thank you for everyone for listening to this episode. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you haven't seen any of our other Disney films podcast, check out the playlist. This will be in the playlist there. And yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Callum. Take care, and bye bye.
Bye bye.